Welcome to the debate. Think about the opening act of that classic science fiction film, The Matrix.
Oh, sure.
You have this protagonist, right? Mr. Thomas Anderson. And he is living a life that is entirely prescribed for him, existing in this system he fundamentally does not understand. He's asleep, essentially.
Yeah, completely oblivious to reality.
Exactly. And then he encounters a guide, a mentor figure named Morpheus. And Morpheus doesn't just, hand Mr. Anderson a new set of rules to follow. He offers him a choice to see reality as it truly is, to wake up.
The red pill or the blue pill.
Right. And in doing so, the sleeping Mr. Anderson ceases to be just a label, just a cog in a machine, and he becomes Neo.
It is, honestly, one of the most enduring narrative frameworks we have, the guide who shatters the illusion so the protagonist can finally step into their true self.
Precisely. And today we're examining a surprisingly similar dynamic, but within the television show Loki. When the god of mischief is thrown into the bureaucratic nightmare of the Time Variance Authority, or the TVA, audiences largely saw, a comic book narrative.
Right, with the time cops and the jet skis and all that.
Yeah, exactly. The jet skis. But beneath the surface lies a hidden 300-year-old philosophical war playing out between Loki and the TVA agent Mobius.
And what makes this narrative so compelling is how it translates incredibly dense academic concepts into a framework that is totally accessible. I mean, it is written in a way that a middle schooler could understand the core emotional stakes. You don't need a degree in philosophy to grasp the sheer depth of what is happening on screen.
So the central question we are debating today is this: are the character arcs in this narrative ultimately driven by a Kantian framework of objective duty and reason? Or are they rooted in a Heideggerian confrontation with radical, unstructured existential freedom?
A fascinating divide.
I will be arguing that the show is fundamentally a demonstration of Kantian enlightenment. The character of Mobius is the embodiment of Immanuel Kant's philosophy. He represents pure reason, fulfilling his moral duty to guide Loki toward the ultimate ethical awakening.
And I will be taking the opposing view. Because while the Kantian structure might provide a nice little scaffolding, I argue that the true philosophical and emotional weight of the story belongs to Martin Heidegger.
Okay, let's hear it.
Loki's journey isn't primarily about submitting to an objective Kantian rulebook. It is defined by a concept called angst, that terrifying realization of subjective freedom, and the agonizing process of having to choose his own future when the universe offers absolutely no guarantees.
Well, let me lay out the Kantian perspective first, because once you see the mechanics of it, it completely reframes the entire series. Immanuel Kant argued that a majority of people live in a state of self-imposed immaturity.
They just blindly follow the rules?
Right. They let dogmatic authorities, kings, priests, or in this specific case, the TVA and the timekeepers, do their thinking for them. Kant's famous mandate during the Enlightenment was sapere aude, which means dare to know. You have to use your own understanding.
And you see Mobius as the one who dares to know?
Exactly. Kant went further, actually. He argued that the people who have already woken up have a strict moral duty to help others wake up too. The ones who know first must lead the ones who do not know yet. Mobius functions as Kantian pure reason.
Wait, clarify that for a second. How exactly is he pure reason?
So pure reason in Kant's philosophy is the part of the mind that can discern objective reality. It is the faculty that judges real from fake, right from wrong, without being clouded by selfish desires. It's the eye that sees.
The eye, right. And Loki is the hand?
Precisely. Loki represents practical reason, the hand that acts in the world. Kant's entire ethical system dictates that the eye must lead the hand. The one who has seen the truth must guide the one who acts.
Okay, I follow the structural argument.
The entire trajectory of the show is Mobius, the eye of pure reason, lifting Loki, the hand, toward his ultimate moral duty. Mobius recognizes the dogma of the TVA for what it is, and he methodically brings Loki into the light.
It is a structurally sound way to view their relationship, sure. But I think it totally sanitizes the raw, beating heart of what Loki actually experiences. To understand the psychological reality of this text, we have to look at Martin Heidegger.
How so?
Well, Heidegger wasn't concerned with objective moral rulebooks. He spent his life asking one fundamental question: What does it actually mean to be? Not to exist as a physical object, like a rock or a table, but to exist as a human being.
And how does he distinguish between the two?
He says that a rock is just a rock. Its essence is fixed, now and forever. It doesn't project itself into the future. But a human being, we are fundamentally incomplete. We are defined by a concept called Entwurf, which translates to projection or throwing forward. We are always reaching towards something we are not yet.
Living in the future, essentially.
Yes. Now look at Loki at the start of the narrative. For his entire life, Loki was existing like a rock. He was a static label, the god of mischief. He was frozen. He was doing the same tricks, suffering the same betrayals, literally destined to lose so that others could achieve their glory. He wasn't a person, he was a category.
Because the timeline, the script of the universe demanded it.
Precisely. So his journey with Mobius isn't about learning a mathematical Kantian moral law. It is about realizing he is not a label. It's the terrifying realization that the script doesn't actually exist, that he can throw himself forward, and that he must choose his own path.
I mean, that is definitely terrifying.
Exactly. And that realization brings a profound, untargeted anxiety angst that comes with knowing that absolutely nothing and no one can tell you what to do.
Well, let's dig into how Mobius actually facilitates this realization, because I think we need to clarify how Kantian reason operates in practice. People often hear pure reason and they picture, a cold, calculating computer.
A robot with a mustache.
Right, exactly. But Kant did not think reason was cold. He believed reason was the mechanism that actually allows for genuine care. Why? Because reason is the exact faculty that lets you look at another individual and recognize them as an autonomous person with inherent worth, rather than just a tool to be used.
The second formulation of the categorical imperative.
You got it. Act in such a way that you treat humanity never merely as a means to an end, but always as an end in itself. In the context of the show, the entire TVA treats Loki as a tool. He's a variant to be pruned, a number on a screen, a means to protect the sacred timeline.
True. They literally process him like paperwork.
But when Mobius looks at Loki, a trickster, a killer, a monster that the rest of the universe has written off, Mobius uses reason to strip away those prejudices. He sees a person capable of growth, a person worth waking up.
I come at it from a different way, though. Because you are painting Mobius as this warm, caring figure of Enlightenment reason. But let's look at his actual methods on screen.
Okay, let's look at them.
In their very first encounter in the Time Theater, what does Mobius actually do? He doesn't sit Loki down and gently explain a universal moral law over a cup of tea. He forces Loki into a chair and presses a button, making him watch a highlight reel of his own agonizing failures.
Well, he has to.
He makes him watch his mother die. He makes him watch his father die. He makes him watch his own pathetic death at the hands of Thanos.
Yes, to break the illusion, to show him the objective reality of his existence.
But it is an incredibly violent psychological act that is not the gentle lighting up of the mind that Kant talks about. That is a forced, brutal initiation into what Heidegger called the call of conscience.
A call of conscience can still be rooted in reason.
Heidegger argued that we spend most of our lives lost in the everyday noise, hiding from ourselves. The call of conscience is the jarring, painful disruption that forces us to look at our own mortality and the emptiness of our constructed identities. Mobius isn't handing Loki an objective moral rulebook. He is systematically stripping away every single one of Loki's excuses.
But he is doing it to get to the truth.
He is dismantling the glorious purpose illusion until Loki is left with absolutely nothing but existential dread. Mobius induces angst to force Loki to realize he is utterly, terrifyingly free.
You call it psychological violence, but the mechanism of that realization is fundamentally tied to truth. Mobius shows him to tape because pure reason demands that dogma be shattered. Kant argued that breaking free from self-imposed immaturity is painful. It requires courage.
It definitely requires courage. I'll give you that.
That's why the motto is dare to know, not relax and know. And we know this process is deeply Kantian because of the specific philosophical destination Mobius is leading him toward. Let's examine one of the most pivotal concepts Mobius introduces. Most purpose is more burden than glory. And later, the mandate to choose your burden.
Right.
He isn't telling Loki to just be authentically free and do whatever he wants with his existential dread. He is explicitly guiding Loki toward Kant's categorical imperative.
I think we need to break down exactly how you see the categorical imperative functioning here, because choose your burden sounds deeply subjective to me.
Okay, so the categorical imperative is the idea that moral duties are logically necessary and universal. You don't do the right thing because it makes you feel good, or because it brings you glory or gets you a reward. You do the right thing simply because it is right.
Pure duty.
Yes, Kant argued that if you act out of selfish inclination, like Loki always seeking a throne to stroke his own ego, you aren't actually free. You are just a slave to your own appetites. Real freedom, objective freedom, is choosing the heavy thing, the difficult thing, specifically because it is your moral duty.
And you think that's what Mobius is teaching him?
When Mobius tells Loki that purpose is a burden, not glory, he is explaining the core mechanic of Kantian ethics. If you want true purpose, you have to abandon your selfish desires and choose the weight of universal duty. He is preparing Loki's hand to execute the moral law.
I'm sorry, but I just don't buy that. Let me tell you why. I understand the logic of the categorical imperative, but applied to this narrative, it completely falls apart.
How does it fall apart?
Kant's ethics rely entirely on universal rules, objective maxims that apply to everyone equally at all times. Do not lie. Do not murder. But Loki's ultimate choice in the narrative is not a universal rule that anyone else could or should follow. It is a deeply personal, singular burden that only he can bear.
It is singular in scale, maybe, but not in principle.
But look at how Loki physically reacts throughout the final acts of the story. He isn't calculating moral equations. He spends so much of his time shaking. He's crying. He's emotionally coming apart at the seams.
Because the weight of the duty is immense. Anyone would be terrified.
No, because he is experiencing Heideggerian angst. And we have to distinguish angst from normal fear. Normal fear has a specific target in the world. You are afraid of a weapon or a monster or a temporal meltdown. Angst has no target.
The general dread.
Heidegger says angst is the feeling of staring into the void of your own future and realizing that the universe is silent. There are no universal rules written in the stars to save you, no categorical imperative to fall back on. You have to choose who you are going to be, and whatever you choose, the responsibility is entirely crushingly your own. Loki is trembling because he realizes there is no objective logic that can make this choice for him. His decision is born out of radical subjectivity.
I'm not convinced by that line of reasoning because you are focusing heavily on the struggle, on the emotional turbulence, rather than the structural resolution of that struggle. Yes, Loki feels anxiety. Waking up from the illusion of a prescribed timeline is terrifying.
Utterly terrifying.
But Loki does not succumb to the angst. He doesn't just wallow in the terror of subjective freedom, which is what happens to so many existential antiheroes. Look at the mechanics of what he actually does at the end of the narrative. He literally destroys the temporal loom, the physical manifestation of prescribed destiny, and he takes the dying timelines into his own hands.
Right.
He walks to the end of time and he sits on a throne, alone, forever.
Which is a terrifying, isolating fate.
It is, but look at the why. He doesn't do it to express his radical individuality. He holds all the timelines so that everyone else can have free will, so that everyone else can live. He sacrifices his own personal desires for the universal preservation of life. He does the right thing strictly because it is the right thing to do, knowing he will receive no thanks, no glory, and no reward.
It is a massive sacrifice.
He sits in the dark, holding up the universe. In that moment, he transcends the Heideggerian anxiety. He stops being a terrified individual and becomes practical reason, in its purest form. He executes the ultimate universal duty. The I, Mobius, successfully led the hand Loki to fulfill the moral law. It is the ultimate Kantian triumph.
But the reason that ending resonates so powerfully with audiences isn't because he ticked a box on a Kantian checklist of universal moral duties. It resonates because of what he actively refused to do.
Which is what?
Heidegger argued that when human beings feel that overwhelming angst, that crushing terror of absolute freedom, their natural psychological instinct is to run away from it. They seek comfort. They go back to sleep. They let the crowd or the authorities or a dictator tell them who to be, because it's easier than choosing for themselves. Heidegger called this falling. You fall back into the crowd and become a comfortable label again.
Well, he definitely faces the temptation to fall. The antagonist offers him exactly that. Rule the TVA, keep the sacred timeline, avoid the hard choice.
Exactly. The true antagonist of Loki's story isn't just a guy in a chair at the end of time. The overarching antagonist is the temptation of falling, the temptation to be a rock again, to let the script write his life. Loki's ultimate victory isn't achieving some abstract objective duty. His victory is his absolute refusal to be a rock.
He chooses action over inaction.
He achieves total self-awareness. He chooses to throw himself forward, onto Earth, and weave the narrative himself, even though the burden of doing so is incomprehensibly heavy and eternally isolating. He becomes a fully actualized human being in the Heideggerian sense, someone who feels the crushing anxiety of the silent universe and chooses to create meaning anyway.
I do see the profound emotional appeal of that Heideggerian reading. Framing his journey as moving from a static object to a dynamic, forward-throwing being definitely captures the psychological weight of his transformation. But from a structural standpoint, we cannot ignore the narrative causality here.
What do you mean by causality?
Loki's Heideggerian awakening, his realization that he could project himself into the future and write his own story, was entirely 100% dependent on Mobius's Kantian intervention.
Oh, so you're saying the existential choice couldn't happen without the Enlightenment first?
Absolutely. Look at Loki before Mobius. He was stuck running in circles, repeating the same betrayals, facing the same defeats. He literally could not see past his own narcissism. He would have remained a frozen label, a rock, forever if Mobius had not intervened.
That is fair. He was deeply stuck.
It required the eye of pure reason to cut through the dogma and turn on the light in the first place. Mobius acted with Kantian duty to wake Loki up. The Enlightenment prerequisite had to be met before the existential leap could even be conceived. Mobius knew the truth. He saw the potential for practical reason inside Loki, and he systematically guided him there.
It is honestly a remarkable narrative layering. The structure relies on the logic of the Enlightenment, but the psychological texture is pure existentialism.
If we look at the complete architecture of the narrative, it stands as a profound demonstration of Kantian enlightenment. We have a story where the one who possesses pure reason fulfills his fundamental moral duty to guide the one who only acts. Mobius takes Loki out of the dogmatic dark and leads him to the point where he can take on the ultimate categorical imperative, choosing the burden of duty over his own personal desire for glory.
And simultaneously, I maintain that the emotional core of that exact same journey remains deeply Heideggerian. We are watching one of the most powerful modern depictions of moving from a static state of being, a prescribed label, to facing the unvarnished, untargeted angst of radical freedom. Loki realizes he is nothing but his own projection into the future, and he takes absolute responsibility for that future, no matter how terrifyingly heavy it is.
Well, what we clearly converge on is the sheer ambition of the storytelling here. We are looking at a narrative that successfully translates 300 years of dense, highly complex German philosophy into a deeply human, extremely accessible format. It proves that you can explain intricate mechanics like Kant's categorical imperative or Heidegger's concept of Endschurf without losing their intellectual rigor.
Yeah, it takes the high-minded textbook concepts of the 1700s and 1900s and just hides them inside a science fiction adventure. And in a way that, like we said, a middle school student could digest. It shows us that complex philosophy isn't just an academic exercise. It provides the fundamental blueprint for understanding how we construct identity and responsibility.
Which brings us right back to Mr. Anderson waking up in the pod, blinking his eyes against the light for the very first time. Whether you view that awakening as the strict Kantian duty to see objective truth or the Heideggerian terror of realizing you are radically subjectively free, the light is turned on, the illusion is shattered.
And the question that remains for all of us isn't just about how we analyze the character arcs of a television show. The question is how we apply these mechanics to our own lives.
Right. Are your own choices driven by a sense of universal duty and the courage to use your own mind to see the objective truth?
Or are you driven by the heavy, untargeted burden of existential freedom, forced to throw yourself forward into an unknown and silent future?
These philosophical frameworks are not just history. They are hidden in plain sight, all around us, dictating the stories we tell and the choices we make.
Because at the end of the day, as Mobius pointed out, most purpose is more burden than glory.
But that burden is exactly what makes you real.